This presentation is provided by BoardPack LLC for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. The opinions expressed by the presenters are their own and not necessarily those of BoardPack. On behalf of BoardPack, we welcome you to today's webinar. BoardPack has teamed up with Amazon's #1 best-selling author in board governance, Thomas Bakewell, and fundraising guru Carol Weisman to help educate boards on the latest industry trends. The Boardroom webinar series will focus on different topics each month through the end of 2015. I wanted to mention really quickly that BoardPack is a secure, affordable, and easy-to-use paperless board meeting solution. Users can access materials from the native iPad app or through a web browser on other devices. Private annotations, minutes builder, and unlimited document storage are a few highlights of what we have to offer. Before we jump into today's topic, let me tell you a little bit about today's speakers. Thomas Bakewell works to bring out the best your team has to offer. He is the author of the book, Claiming Your Place at the Boardroom Table. Over the past 30 years, Thomas Bakewell has advised and directed CEOs and presidents of large for-profit and nonprofit corporations. His vast board experience has made him a leader and go-to source in board governance. Carol Weisman, president of Board Builders, is an internationally known speaker, author, trainer, and consultant. Carol specializes in volunteerism, fundraising, and governance. Carol won a Telly Award for her PBS special, Building a Board with a Passion for Mission. Her board experience is vast, having served on 38 boards and served as president of 7. Carol and Tom, take it away.
Well, good day. We're here for a great program with Carol Weisman, the top fundraising guru from St. Louis, to talk to us about donor retention. And I love how she says it. It's about friends for life. Carol, what are you going to tell us today about donor retention and friends for life?
Well, let's start with the 4 steps in fundraising. And I know a lot of my colleagues have 6 steps, 3 steps, 11 steps, some cha-cha, some tango.
Okay.
I tend to use 4 steps.
Okay.
The first one is donor identification, so you find out who might be your potential donor. Cultivation, that's the dating step where you find out if you're compatible and if what you're doing is what someone's interested in funding. The ask is very obvious when you ask for the gift. And stewardship. And stewardship is the least understood, the easiest to do, and done the worst.
Now let's so you're giving us a breakdown there on stewardship, but let's loop back to donor identification for a moment. How deep do you go with that? It's not just a name list. It's what people's capacity is, what their interests are. Tell us a little bit about donor identification.
Really, it's very easy in some organizations and very difficult in others. So, for instance, a university has the names of their alumni, and a rare disease is very difficult to track to find out if someone has an interest in that.
Okay, very good. All right.
So, we're going to concentrate on stewardship today. And this is the biggest missed opportunity. And what I find that's fascinating is it's such a big missed opportunity, and yet this is the area where board members are totally comfortable.
If they know how to do it, if they're coached, or is it a natural talent?
It's a natural talent for most people. Good. If they're asked to thank someone and not ask for more money, they're thrilled.
They're happy to do it. They like it's kind of like the new baby coming home. They're happy to share the good news. Tell us, just give us, before we hit into the slides here, give us a top-line definition or an overview of what you mean by stewardship, though.
Saying thank you appropriately.
There you go. That's about as simple a definition as you can get.
According to Penelope Burk, who is really one of the top researchers and one of the people I admire most in the field, donors want 2 things: appropriate recognition and information on how the funds were spent.
We have a nice picture of a Mont Blanc pen here. What are you saying to us with that? And by the way, Penelope Burk is world-class. Her research is world-class in the area, particularly of planned giving and large gifts.
She's the queen.
Yes.
I was on a board in 1980, and we were having a terrible, terrible year. And things were really bad, and we were laying off staff. And at the end of the year, to thank the board members, they gave us all Mont Blanc pens that were engraved.
And you remember that to this day?
I remember that to this day because I think it was the worst gift I ever got.
In what regard?
Because I thought, why are you spending money on a Mont Blanc pen that was engraved? In those days, I don't know what they cost now, but it was at least $100. It was engraved. It is still in my top drawer. I've never used it. And it just felt bad. You don't lay off staff and then give the board Mont Blanc pens.
Kind of falls in the category of top CEOs making big money when there's other challenges going on, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Okay, so tie that back right here to this pyramid that I see. What do you want? What you want is a trip up the donor pyramid for your contributors.
Exactly, and this is where we do it badly. And this is the Shum way. There's a number of people who do it slightly differently. I like his or hers. I've never figured out. But you start with donor acquisition programs, and that may be a special event. Then you ask for annual support. Then you ask for major donor. And it's very interesting because a major donor for some organizations can be $500, for another $12 million. So
Yes.
you have to determine what's a major donor.
Yep.
Transitional donors, and those are people who might give one large gift and that's it. Major gift donors, and those are consistently large donors, and then life gifts. And I think that's actually badly phrased because it's past your life.
Yeah. Now I'm going to come back to this major annual donors here and have a little fun with you. I spoke about a week ago at a major governance event, primarily on governance. I always, like you, have a love for the not-for-profit world, so I did a breakout, 7 a.m. come if you want program on not-for-profits, and I was surprised that we got a little turnout, had about 30 people in the room. And it's people who have all been on not-for-profit boards, but it's from the soup kitchen all the way up to, and somebody asked the question, should it be required to make a gift to be on a board? So we're not here to talk about that today, but I said, well, one of the issues becomes the amount. So I used your example of $100, and there was somebody at the table who laughed, and I looked at her, and I actually had a little history on her background, not particularly. But I said, are you on the MoMA board? What's the MoMA board, Carol?
The Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah, and what do you think the minimum to get on that board is?
100,000.
Oh, yeah. Now, she was talking like millions, but...
No, but I think the minimum
yeah,
is 100,000.
Yeah, exactly. So it really does depend on your capacity and what your ability and talent is.
Thank people immediately.
Absolutely.
And in one test with board members calling within 48 hours, those called gave an average of 39% more than those not called.
Now, when you say break that number down over the next 12 months or after 14
Yes.
months right there in
Yes.
front of us, good. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so board members actually are more powerful than the CEO when it comes to calling to thank, unless the CEO has a relationship with the donor. Because the idea is that we're peer-to-peer.
Right.
So thank you, and we'll talk about how to do that specifically later on.
Yeah.
And you need to know your donor retention rate. Another wonderful guru and mentor of mine, Jerry Panis, says, and I think this is true in all industries. It just depends on whether it's 5 times, 7 times. But the bottom line is it's much, much harder to get a new donor than to keep a current donor.
It's the same true with clients, isn't it? It's
Exactly.
a whole lot easier to keep a current client happy than to go and harvest a new one. Although, at the same time, we're not implying here in any way that we ever stop getting new donors, are we?
No,
Yeah.
you absolutely continue.
Yeah.
It's that when you were a kid, did they say, make new friends but keep the old?
Sure.
Some are silver and...
Well, this
The
is
other's gold.
and bluebirds. So this is a key point that I've actually run into a disconnect here. Let me ask you about. I've run into some organizations that have had great success on their donor, the big donor acquisition.
Yes.
And they did annual funds for years, but when times got a little tough, they figured, well, and it's a lot of work doing that annual fund or whatever. So they said, well, we'll just cut back on that. And I thought, this is a terrible disconnect. What's your comment on that?
I agree.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
I totally agree with
You
you.
got to keep the pipeline growing.
Absolutely. And you need a disciplined approach to stewardship. And another guru in stewardship is Adrian Sargent. A 10% increase in donor retention can increase the lifetime value of your donor base by 200%. And he's written a wonderful 23-page article. Just Google Adrian Sargent.
Okay.
And you'll see that he's outlined it again, like Penelope Burk, a great researcher and a wonderful addition to our field.
And is it on the specific topic of stewardship plans, or
it's actually on donor retention,
donor retention.
and he's got the math to prove it.
Good. All right.
And again, a donor retention plan can be very different for very different organizations.
So give us an example or two. We can blow through the list here, but just pick a couple and give us a couple examples.
Well, here's where a lot of people disagree with me, but they're wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here you go.
I
know.
I seldom
This
disagree
is
with my
really
wife
obnoxious.
and get anywhere. So
yeah,
there you go.
A lot of people like to write a personal note.
Yeah.
A personal phone call is much more valuable.
I agree with that one. Okay.
And here's the reason. With a note, you don't get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about how to do a stewardship call a little later. But those calls are fabulous. And even if you leave a message to say, this is Carol Weisman, I'm a board member on blah, blah, blah board. I'm calling to thank you for your gift. Thanks to you, we are going to be able to serve more kids, purchase more art, do whatever we're going to do.
What about big hitter VIPs?
Quite different.
Okay.
Number one, you also have an immediate phone call.
Okay.
But then you may want to call them and say, would you like a tour?
Okay.
And tours are very specific in terms of what they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may be a tour for 2 people, maybe 3.
Okay.
But it's a behind the scenes, this is how your money was spent kind of visit. Emails, you can keep them in the loop. This is not a frontline stewardship.
Mm-hmm.
But for instance, I had a event to honor someone who had done a lot for a school. And he's wonderful. And he's not in good health. He's in his 80s. And with his permission, we have sent out, people came from 15 states for this party.
You did an event to honor him?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so with his permission, we've sent emails simply to catch people up, to say he's now on dialysis, he loves your letters, he doesn't do email. I think he's like my husband, he believes it's just a passing fad.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants us to thank you all and thank you for your prayers and your letters. And so we email people about every 6 or 8 weeks just to update them, because he's not very communicative. He doesn't use email. And so that's been really helpful.
That's really neat, and I want to comment on that from another angle. You do find these people in organizations, they might be the janitor.
Oh, yeah.
All the way from the boiler room all the way up to the boardroom, who have had the culture in their soul, or they've had an important role, and they may not be high profile, but they may be loved. And it really is fantastic to highlight them, and you get a lot of mileage with that.
Absolutely.
Good.
And focus groups, there's an old phrase that is so true. If you ask for advice, you get money. If you ask for money, you get advice.
That's true. So on the focus groups, you're getting people and asking them what they really think.
Yes, and it can be anything. One of my mother's friends was a big donor to the St. Louis Science Museum. And when they put in the IMAX theater, these people had paid for a lot of it. They were invited to a screening so that they could decide which was the first video. Mm-hmm. And they loved it.
Love that. Good.
Loved it.
And just trivia, what was the first video? Do you know, or do you recall?
I don't recall. It was it was probably 20 years
Early
ago.
on, sure. Absolutely. Okay.
The other thing that I love is a stewardship event, just getting people together. I think there are 2 kinds of people. People who would rather go to an educational event and people who'd rather go to a social event.
Well, tell me a little bit more about specifically. Give me a picture of what those stewardship events might look like.
Sometimes it is, for instance, if you're a hospital, and you and I both work with a lot of hospitals, it may be an inside look about the flu this year. It may be on changes in HIV. Whatever's breaking in the news is an event only for donors.
Okay.
And you get the inside scoop on Ebola was a great one. One of my clients, we did it very interactively, and people loved it.
Okay.
What we did is we got volunteers who were donors to put on the hazmat suits.
Yeah.
And we had nurses and videos. And when you put on all this stuff, you're not supposed to touch yourself.
Right.
Like scratch your nose or whatever.
Okay.
And they claimed they didn't. And we had the video
on
to
a video.
prove they did.
Okay. Very good.
And then we said, now imagine it's 105 degrees
Yeah, look
out.
how difficult this would be. Yeah.
And they were so willing to fund the work that was going on. And I love mission trips. So that's the other thing.
Yeah. So mission trips, now let's go back to that. So I recall you going to a rainforest one time.
Oh, yeah.
And what was that for? Obviously.
That was for Friends of the Children's Eternal Rainforest. And the donors, we took a donor trip.
Is that like Garden of Eden?
Not if you like lights and electricity.
Okay.
I always imagine the Garden of Eden with air conditioning, electricity, and internet service.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a slightly different approach to Eden. But it is a magical place, and people fell in love with it. And we also showed them not just the magical place, but the places that were not reclaimed.
I see.
Where the forest had been stripped.
And what island was this?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Which is not an island.
Fabulous. It is not. Yeah, thank you. Okay, large landmass.
Right.
Okay, you need a number of techniques to share with donors how their funds were used. People really do like feedback, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love using postcards because I live in a large building, and one of my neighbors, Susan, and I were standing at the bank of mailboxes, and we're both reading the same postcard, and it's about gutter cleaning. And I said, Susan, why are we reading this postcard? We moved here so we wouldn't have to worry about gutter cleaning.
Exactly.
And yet we threw out, it was like we were dealing poker. We're throwing out piece of mail after piece of mail, but there's a postcard, and us two clowns are reading about
get some helmets, gutter helmets, huh?
Right. And I'll give you an example of one of my clients who did this. The Center for Plant Conservation did a brilliant job with this. And so for Valentine's Day, they sent out this magnificent postcard of a rare rose that had been saved through seed banking. And then on the other side, it said, thanks to you, lovers all over the world will be able to give this rose
fabulous
to the ones they love.
Yep.
The funniest one they did was the next one, which was this really terrible looking plant, and it was for Mother's Day, and it said some plants only a mother could love. It had all these thorns on it, and on the other side it said, thanks to you, this plant is loved.
Very interesting. Good. You got to recognize those loyal donors as well as large donors. So two distinct categories: the loyal ones, the people that have given you $25 a year for 50 years, and then also the people that are writing the big checks.
Absolutely, and this is so easy to do, and so few people do it. To award people, and sometimes it's because their records are bad, and so when you have bad records, 20 years ago we switched from note cards to computers. You have to have a big disclaimer that says, if you have been giving longer than this, please call our office.
Right.
Our records might be incomplete. But these donors who give for 25 years or more, actually the number is 10 years or more, are your planned giving candidates.
Yes, they are. Yeah, we know that for sure. And the other thing, the comment I'd like to make here and get you just to touch on, this also goes to the fact of how important systems are and back office are, because so many people want to cut the budget or want to scrimp on the backside, and you really have to have great data, don't you?
Absolutely. And the other thing that really aggravates me is when people say, well, we thank our $1,000 donors, but we don't have time to thank our $100 donors.
Right.
Well, if you don't want a planned gift, don't thank them.
Right. Okay.
And that's the name of the game.
Very good. So to inspire loyalty, your donor needs to want to identify with your brand.
And you have to be very clear about who you are.
Yes.
And just take a look at some of these brands. The Metropolitan Opera has a very elegant brand. It is very, it's old.
Regal, old school.
Absolutely. Brightpoint Health, if you've never seen their logo. They have the world's best logo.
Okay.
And Greenpeace is kind of gritty, out there. They have a fairly renegade kind of brand. And I couldn't reach all of them, and that's why I don't have
So we want to honor people's permissions, but they can certainly go online and look at those. So please do that. And there are lots of great brands out there.
And there's my brand on the left, which is kind of silly and goofy, and yours is much more staid.
Yes, and there's a great one on BoardPack for
Absolutely.
a great board portal that is out there. Okay. Well, you're getting ready to pull up a picture here that this is one back to mailings. Every time I get a mailing from these people, and a lot of times it is postcards, it tugs my heart. There's one that is, I started my career in healthcare, and there's one that's very similar called Mercy Ships. It's the ships that go around the world with the operating rooms and all. And there's never a time that I don't get that I don't either think of writing a check or sending money or think, maybe this would be a great retirement gig. So it really does make an impact there. So what do you got to say here about sharing what the donor has accomplished?
I think everybody should take a look at the Smile Train website because it shows you the problem, which is cleft lip and palate, and it shows you what the repair is.
Right.
And it used to be that they asked for specifically $250. They don't do that anymore, and I think it's probably because costs have gone up. But you can change, and they're very specific about it. When you've repaired a cleft lip and palate, someone has good nutrition, they can get a job, and they can get married.
You've changed their life.
For $250.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most poignant websites. Here's one thing I have to warn our listeners about. If you use pictures of children, do not use their real names and get a photo release. You have to be very sensitive about that.
Very sensitive, very cautious. Very good.
So,
good tip.
Thank you notes versus phone calls. This is one of my favorite clients. Her name
This is a real live person.
Yes.
I hope you got permission.
I did.
Okay.
She had the picture taken and sent to me. And this is Dr. Edie Zussman, and she's a board member, she's a wife, she's a mother, and in her spare time she's a neurosurgeon.
Oh my goodness.
The only problem with Edie, I always rag her about this, is that she is too pretty to play a neurosurgeon on TV.
Oh my.
But she is in a spot where she doesn't ever want to call a patient to ask for money. And so she said she would do donor thank you calls. Oh. And she does. And she calls donors and thanks them. And her retention rate is through the roof.
Oh, my.
And in her script...
What kind of charity is she involved in? Can you say?
Yeah, epilepsy.
Okay.
And she's president of the board this year. And she's also been on the national board of the neurosurgical... Oh, I spelled neurosurgery wrong. I apologize.
You're close. It was close.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
To Ben Carson and to Edie and all the neurosurgeons that are listening.
Okay.
Anyway, but she gets a lot of information, and it's really been very beneficial. When thanking in written form, and a lot of us do, and it should be somebody with good handwriting.
I was just going to ask you on a serious note, what about handwritten notes? Is that more powerful, or are you a little dicey on that?
No, I like them. My favorite group is a Catholic group of older women who all learned the Palmer method.
Oh, sure, the penmanship, absolutely.
Yes. You have to have good penmanship.
Good script.
And if not, type it and say at the bottom, sorry, this is typed, my handwriting is illegible. Be clear what their gift has achieved.
Okay.
And I always like the phrase, thanks to you. And whatever has happened, a mother and child will sleep safe tonight. You helped, thanks to you, an aspiring musician, whatever. Never say thank you for your generous gift.
Yeah.
Because unless you know the person.
Yeah, they may have given you a tip, and a tip of $100 when they could have given you $100,000, or what?
Or vice versa.
Yeah, or vice versa.
I remember when my husband and I were newly married. We had one baby. He was working 80 to 90 hours a week. And I was on a board. This is 1978. And we had no money. And I said, as a board member,
you committed.
I have to make a donation. And I said, for the month of November, let's not go out at all. No babysitters.
Right.
I'll cook every night. We'll do a few nights of ramen noodles and make that work. I sent in a gift of $200 and wasn't
So
thanked.
it was a sacrificial gift. It was
not
only a generous gift, it was a sacrificial gift.
Yes, and it was $200, and I did not get a thank you note. And in April, I asked them for a tax receipt and didn't receive that.
Oh, my.
Guess who's not in my will?
Yeah, them, and you probably didn't stay on that board too long unless you had some heavy work to do further down the road with them. Okay.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the common mistakes that you get in terms of donor retention?
This is so common.
You got a picture here. Is this a real life story? What coming up?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not getting everyone's address. And in fact, what happened, and we're going to go on to the plaza, the next one.
Now you're talking the Plaza. You're not talking about Kansas City Country
No, this
Club
is
Plaza.
New
You're
York.
talking like that hotel where. Okay. Very
Okay.
good.
What happened was I went to a reception at the Plaza.
A high-end event, obviously.
Luckily, someone invited us. This gentleman paid for 3 tables.
Okay.
The tickets were $750 a person.
Okay.
And they had a fabulous program.
Right.
I mean, it was star-studded.
Right.
There were people that I recognized from. I'm a big E fan, so they were in People magazine.
Sure.
All my best.
Hollywood, the Hollywood
Absolutely.
crowd was there. So were they going to make an ask for money that night?
They did, and
what happened?
Oh, it was so tragic. What they did was they had brochures that were 4-color. They were beautiful. That had their clients' artwork and poems, and they were fairly large, and the tables were fairly smashed. And so I put mine in my purse, and Frank put his under his table because there was no
Where else
room
would
for
you
them.
put it? Exactly.
And at one point they said, "We'd like you to give a donation," and they gave a slight pitch. Please fill out the cards on your table. And we couldn't find any cards
They
on our
were in
table.
the books. Okay.
Yes. So
So a simple miscue on the message.
well, and then one woman who I knew that was there said, "I filled out the card. They never collected it." And I'm not leaving a card.
Yeah.
With
all
my-
my information
with
floating
my credit
around,
card
you
number
bet.
on the
Yeah,
desk.
Absolutely.
So when I got back to the hotel in New York, the card fell out. I said, "Oh, here's the card. I'll fill
Right.
it out when I get home."
Right.
Well, I did fill it out when I got home. There was no address.
Nowhere to send it.
Nowhere to send
so you
it.
would have to look it up and take the time to do that.
And they had 9
Yeah.
locations.
Oh my gosh. Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
it was just
So somebody had missed a lot of the details. Absolutely.
and that was just tragic.
Yeah.
And some people like to give very different ways, from a donor advised fund.
Right.
Some people give cash,
Right.
appreciated securities, and some people like to give.
So if you're going to be in the business, you got to be sophisticated.
This isn't even sophisticated. This is just
Basics. This is basics.
This is
You
the
bet.
basics, and
Okay.
it was a beautiful event.
Okay.
And it was just a travesty.
Okay.
I want to before we go on, I really want to talk about a stewardship phone call, and I'm going to go back to that. A stewardship phone call actually has 4 parts.
Okay. Let's hear them.
And the first part is identifying yourself, your relationship to the organization.
I'm a board member. I'm an employee. I'm a donor. What?
Yes. And that you're not asking for money. So I'm going to say, is Tom Bakewell there? You're going to say yes. This is Carol Weisman. I'm on the board of XYZ, and I'm calling to thank you for your donation
Right.
and not to ask for more money.
Okay. Very good.
Second step, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, if you've got a minute, could you share with me why you decided to give us the gift? We're thrilled.
Okay. So just looking for more information, engaging in conversation.
Absolutely. The third step is to say, would you mind sharing what we're doing well and what we could do better?
Okay. You're the expert. Fill us in on what's working and what's not. And you probably learn a lot during that stage.
Absolutely. And the fourth step is to record this so other people have some record of it.
Right.
And I'll give you an
Talking
example.
about an audio recording? You talking about
No.
hand notes? May I take some notes or what?
No, it's for your files.
Got you. Okay.
And I'll give you a great example of this. I teach a lot of doctors how to fundraise. They really don't want to learn. And so this orthopedic surgeon that I was training said, right off the bat, I'd been in the room for 1 minute. He said, "I just want you to know I'm not asking anyone for money."
Right.
I said, "No problem." And he looked at me like he didn't believe me.
Right.
And he's the same kind of guy that says, "This isn't going to hurt." Well,
Right.
it doesn't hurt him. It hurts you.
Of course.
But anyway, so I said to the orthopedic surgeon, "You can be a great fundraiser and never ask for money." And he crossed his arms across his chest and just glared at me.
Right.
He kind of looked like Clint Eastwood. It was
Okay.
slightly scary.
All right.
And so I get a call 3 weeks later from the director of development, and he said, "You won't believe what Dr. So-and-so did." And I said, "What happened?" And he said, he called the donor and he said, "Hello, this is Dr. So-and-so. As you advised," he said, "this is not a medical emergency. I'm calling blah, blah, blah. Thank you for your gift." He said, "Do you mind if I ask you why you gave the gift?"
Right.
And the donor said, "I'm a physicist and I'm retired, and I was helping my grandson, who's in 6th grade, with a robotics project, and my grandson said, how do they use robots? And he said, they use them at the hospital down the street. And they do surgery with them.
Like the Da Vinci, not to mention it.
Yes, it was a Da Vinci robot.
Da Vinci? Yeah.
It was absolutely the Da Vinci robot. And so this brilliant orthopedic surgeon, who is my star pupil of all time, said, this Saturday, and then he said, so I sent in a small donation. It was $1,000.
Right.
So that tells you a lot, too.
It's a starting point.
Absolutely.
Good capacity.
And so this wonderful orthopedic surgeon said, this Saturday, I'm teaching a group of interns how to use the Da Vinci robot.
Would you like to come?
Well, and
Would you like to bring your grandson?
He said, we are operating on a Purdue frozen chicken. So he said, sure. Oh, that'd be fabulous. So he said, how many robots do you have? And again, this brilliant orthopedic surgeon said, unfortunately,
not enough.
Only 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he said, how many do you need? And he said, at least 3, ideally 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, how much do they cost? And the orthopedic surgeon lied. He said, I actually don't know, which is not true. And he said, but I can have someone from development there. Would you like me to have someone come and talk to you about it? And he said, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And so
so just for the record, what are they, $1 million a pop?
They are.
Okay.
Are you thinking about buying one?
No, I
you
just
can get one for $1 million.
We're not talking about the chicken. We're talking about the Da Vinci.
Right.
Okay.
The robot was $1 million. And this gentleman and his 2 partners are buying one.
There you go.
And that's what happens with a thank you call.
Very cool.
So in summary, whether you have a golf tournament, a rodeo, a run, whatever you're doing, you need to share your mission, and it has to be online, and you have to let the guests be part of the solution. You can never say, this is hopeless, there's nothing we can do, and then leave people without figuring out how they can be a part of the solution. And
it's got to be easy for them to give.
Absolutely, and people like to give in different ways.
Yep.
I gave to one group, and they drove me crazy. I made a pledge of $200, small gift, and said, this will come from my donor advised fund. I gave them the name of the fund, and they dunned me I did it that day, and they sent me nasty notes for 4 months, and then they called me, and I was livid.
Yeah, we all have those experiences. I had one where it was a faith-based community, and they made an assumption. I gave them a stock gift, for me, a very generous stock gift at the time. This was in my youth. And they took the liberty of instructing the broker to charge the fees for the trading the stock back to me. And, not to mention all the tax implications and everything else. It was such bad form that they never got another gift again. In fact, they really heard about it. It was a total turnoff over not a lot of money, but
it was a lot for you.
Well, but it just was just taking the liberty. It was really going a step over the line, and because they don't have good leadership or good management, and that was the answer on that one. Now, wait a minute. Now, here you talk about a rodeo or a run or a dinner dance, and I know about golf tournaments. I know about dinner dances. Running, the last time I went to a run was at the Plaza in New York City, and it wasn't pretty because it was a New York City marathon. I did not run it. Don't ask. What do you mean by a rodeo? Like an old-fashioned rodeo?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Out in Oklahoma, Texas,
okay.
They have rodeos.
Okay.
And they have... A lot of the rodeos actually have jumbotrons.
Okay.
And so they can put a message about your mission.
Okay.
Thanks to your being here today, someone with multiple sclerosis is blah, blah, blah,
Very cool.
A cure is hopefully in their lifetime.
Very cool. Okay.
So say thank you, and you will retain your donors. It's that
Okay.
simple.
Very good. What do you got the summary for us here? You got any summary thoughts as we keep donors for life?
Absolutely. Say thank you. You will make your mother proud, and you'll retain your donors. And on Christmas morning, I was really mean. I used to make my children write their thank you letter, or when they were really little guys, draw a picture before they played with their toys.
Oh, my.
And the reason I told them was that children who say thank you get more and better gifts.
Ooh, great idea.
And they understood that.
Very neat. Well, great to be with you, Carol Weisman, and great to be with BoardPack.
Thanks so much.
Bye now.
Thank you again to Tom and Carol for your wonderful insight today. If you have any questions or comments for today's speakers, their contact information is on the screen. If you have interest in learning more about BoardPack, please send us an email, sales@boardpack.com.